Hey guys, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today I'm asking the question, is the United States about to get its own GDPR? Now, this is coming from Reuters, and it's absolutely fascinating. And before we dive into that, if you're not familiar with the CCPA, we need to talk about this first. It's the California Consumer Privacy Act, and it's basically California's version of the GDPR, which is European Union's version of data privacy for consumers and citizens. Basically, it's your right to be forgotten. It's your right to have your data erased from a major social media platform like a Facebook, a Google, etc. Now, this law, the CCPA, takes effect in California at the beginning of 2020, and this has several massive tech companies like Facebook, Google, etc., basically scrambling their lobbyists in Washington, D.C. to try and kill this, because the one thing that they don't want to face is basically a patchwork of states that all have their own versions of the CCPA or GDPR, and now instead of having one uniform national law in the United States to cover data privacy for citizens, they now have to deal with possibly 50 of them, given how many states are here in the United States. And with some of these states having major economies around the globe, that's a very serious consideration. And so here we are. And so by virtue of them seeking a need to have a nationwide GDPR or CCPA, we now enter Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi. He is a Republican. Now, a draft, and this is from Reuters, a draft consumer privacy bill written by Senator Wicker's staff would set nationwide rules for handling personal information online and elsewhere and override state laws, including the CCPA in California. Now, I quote Reuters here. Compared with California's law, the staff bill has more detailed consumer protections, covers more companies, and has more explicit requirements that companies collect the minimum amount of personal data needed for their purpose, Wicker said. So in other words, my Reuters quote is what Wicker told Reuters, that basically his bill is more comprehensive and would be more aggressive for data security rights than the CCPA in California. Now, Wicker, he chairs the Commerce Committee, said in an interview on Monday today that basically this 25-page draft bill is quote-unquote better, stronger, clearer than the CCPA in California. Now, Wicker's office released a copy of this draft to Reuters and has basically been circulating this around major news outlets or so. So we're going to start to see analysis of this. But the bill largely focuses on online consumer privacy, but it also covers other consumer data as well. Wicker said that much of this bill aligns with the legislation actually introduced by the top Democrat on the committee, Maria Cantwell, and this is what she released last week. So this is Senator Wicker's response from the other side. But here's the thing. The Democrats, like Cantwell, for example, are determined not to sign a privacy bill that would actually preempt state laws, while conversely, on the flip side, the Republicans appear equally determined to actually make sure that they are preempting state law in this specific issue, which is the stated policy position of Facebook, Google, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the crux of this difference between these two, outside of do we allow state laws to be preempted, or do we preempt, or do we not preempt state laws, which is interesting because historically the Republicans in the United States have been the pro-state law party, and in this case it's actually flipped, which I find very interesting. But Wicker said that he and Cantwell disagree over whether individuals would have the right to sue for violations of privacy under the law. And so I think this is actually very interesting. And if I'm, putting my opinion out in here of what we need, I do think we need a national law similar to European Union's GDPR or California's CCPA. We should not have a patchwork of state laws specifically for this, because I think, in Facebook and Google's defense, surprisingly enough, that would be very difficult for them to actually adhere to. And so it just makes it easier to have a national law. But I will say this. I know that Google, Facebook, etc., and I'm just using those two as the blanket because there are several other tech companies involved in this lobbying action in the federal government in the United States. They would want the most watered down bill that is possible, giving consumers basically no more protection than they already have. If they had it their way, this wouldn't even be an issue. And so what I think we need is a national law, but it needs to be stringent. It needs to not be beholden to the lobbyists, by big tech and all of that. It actually needs to do very similar things to what the European Union's GDPR is, or what CCPA in California is designed to do. So we're probably going to see a Supreme Court fight over CCPA. If we can get a bipartisan support in the Senate between both Republicans and Democrats, and then have a similar bipartisan report in Republicans and Democrats in the House, we may actually see our own GDPR spinning up, because it looks like both the Republicans and the Democrats in the Senate are proposing this bill. They just have to figure out where they can make compromises on. And so hopefully those compromises won't put us in a negative position, us meaning the citizenship, the consumers that want that right to be forgotten, that want that right to basically be able to get out of Facebook's ecosystem and identify everything they've done to us and erase ourselves from there. That's what we're talking about. I think it is the next step in evolution. And while I am not for regulation, this is one of those things that helps to ensure our privacy and helps to ensure our freedom online by giving us recourse with our data. So I'm a big proponent of that. Just don't water it down if it's going to be national. That's all I ask. And that is your news of the day. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, guys.